So I guess we could begin. Call the meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. Are there any changes to the agenda for this evening? If not, do I hear a motion to adopt the agendas?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Wait, I'm sorry. The nomination committee report and then the new business nominations. Is that a double?
I think it needs to be on the agenda that when you guys make the decision and call a vote.
You're not supposed to actually do business in your committee reports.
Oh, okay.
Which is what
All right, thank you for clarification. We'll stop asking that question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Public comment? Doesn't look like anyone here right now. The minutes, do we have any changes to the minutes from our last meeting? Seeing that there don't seem to be any, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our previous meeting? Thank you, Don.
I'll second.
Thank you, Melissa. All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Our treasurer's report and the check register. Mary tasked out a brand spanking new check register for everybody. Any additions on the end of it, Mary, that we want to know about?
Well, any questions on anything in the check register at all? I wanted to point out to everybody in the check register on CDP, check number 5126 CDPHP. It's, big number, $91,358 for both the January and February invoice for all our employees' health care, and that was $41,000 and $43,000 respectively, and then now also our retirees' health care is on there, and that's $6,000, so that's why that was such a big amount. Any other, and you see in the check register, there's a lot of maintenance service contracts that we pay for in the beginning of the year. So, for instance, the Johnson Controls bill, which was 5148, that was a big one. So some of the bigger ones were service contracts. But any questions specifically on any checks?
Could you just go over, do we pay for museum passes for all the museums, or we have different relationships with different museums?
Jenny would have to answer that specifically if we pay for, Mary knows.
Some of them we pay for, some of them the libraries donate to us, like the Clark donates one pass per location that we pay for basketball cup. So it varies.
Well, the check to Albany Institute just seems like opportunity for partnership, or don't we see it?
We don't know.
We can probably talk to them. I mean, think of it, any public, like they're looking for money just like we are, but we could speak to them.
Is that amount just for museum passes, or is it for other items as well? Sorry.
$765.
Yeah, I think that's for all the passes that we have different shows.
But it's the check to Albany Institute. Oh, but for all the.
But all of our locations.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're great, so I wouldn't ever say not to do them.
Sure, and we are definitely looking to create a stronger relationship with them, and I know that they're trying to improve kind of their community outreach. So we can definitely approach them and find out if that price is negotiable.
I would have to wonder also whether there's any sort of usage-based history behind that, given that it's right in the city. It's probably, I would guess it's more often used than maybe Nasmoka or the Clark where you have to travel to. So that might be a question to ask whether it's usage-based or not.
Is there an easy way to figure out how often the museum passes
Sure.
are used?
Yeah.
Okay.
And some museums actually keep a record, some museums actually ask for us to provide information.
Anything else for the treasurer's report and the check register?
We're gonna go over the treasurer's report too, when we do that, budget month.
Okay.
Check register has to be.
Okay. For approval of the check register, do I have a motion? Thanks, Alice. Do I have a second? Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. Committee reports, we probably want Andy to be here for the finance committee.
I'd say so.
So if, in deference to that, could we flip-flop and put the pressure on the nominating committee to move forward?
As you know, we interviewed for the new person position on January 27th and 28th. We interviewed 3 candidates, all of them were really super. And, we think they've done good work. But we are nominating John Davis, who's a management student with us for the seat.
Anything else from the meeting, or is that it?
No, and your, in your packet, you'll see that we have this from the 2 meetings that we had, the fair for the equities and the equity response. We have what we were looking for, in terms of qualities of the trustees, and we included the interview questions, and also on the time frame for, improvements for
Thank you for doing all that work. A lot of legwork to get at least 3 people into question and go through, so I appreciate that. We all do. And,
Arlene did a super job. She's like incredibly organized and thorough and had materials, blustered in every time she had materials so that, we look like fully together.
It was a team effort. It was a team.
Just a suggestion, I wasn't on the nominating committee the last time that we had a vacancy to fill, but this time, and it was nice to have this process already laid out, and I wonder whether we could or should recommend it as a regular policy procedure to go on the grid, so that we, in case if this happens again, which it probably will at some point in the future, that we kind of codify this and have it be the procedure for filling a trustee vacancy. Just a suggestion, because I thought the questions were great, and the process was really very well thought out and very easy to follow.
is that something we want to just back out of our next policy governance meeting then?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think we'll still hold up on the finance committee. UHLS report. I've been told our rep is still on vacation, so there is no report. Please, the director's report, please.
So as you can see, we actually, we went through and did interviews for the new IT manager, and we hired Bill Roselle, who's an internal candidate. We think he's gonna do fantastic. He blew the other candidates out of the water. We were very impressed. We'd love to hire, and we like to see people grow within the organization and hire that person. So now we're going through the process of hiring his replacement, and we're being active in promoting that position.
So who is he?
Bill Roselle he was Marcia's basically second in charge, senior technology specialist. So Bill has been with us 4 years, 5 years? 5 years, because he just got his certificate. So, I want to go back to my special portion of the report after I go highlight a couple things. One is Washington Avenue. We overhauled the first floor, and we've gotten nothing but positive feedback from the public about it. And also, we've been allowing some after-hours meetings in a large auditorium. And as you can see, our meeting room use is up significantly. Arbor Hill, West Hill is part of the branches that we're launching the tablet program, and that seems to have become very, very popular in a very short amount of time. Bach was open for 3 Sundays, and as you can see through the metrics, really helped our numbers. Very happy about that. I saw Allison on Sunday. She made me realize that I hadn't really looked at the numbers here, and really a significant increase in usage just with 3 extra, open 3 extra Sundays. As you know, we've been having some security issues with Delaware, particularly with teens after hours. The new branch librarian there was kind of tasked with coming up with some programmatic ideas to take care of that issue, and she's doing a fika after school time, which is a Swedish custom, where the program room will be open for teens to just kind of come in, hang out, and it kind of, I actually got some positive responses about what we're doing there. Last time I was at Delaware, that we are doing something to kind of reduce the bad behavior, mostly the noise in that location, and I think that program was a brilliant idea. For Howe, I just want to note, Howe is now our #1 performing branch in terms of programming, which, it's always been Washington Avenue, it's been 1-1-1-1-1, and Howe has surpassed that. Very excited. And North Albany, which I like to joke is the little branch that could, they are the one location that saw an increase in circulation. So very happy with that. Automation's been working on Chromebooks to lend in-house at our locations. It's really exciting. And also we had 2 programs that was through a partnership with Albany High, Student Performing Arts, and the New York State Writers Institute, where we had Folktales of Zora Neale Hurston performed at 2 different locations, and at both of those locations we saw more than 50 participants, which is fantastic. And also January was a significant jump in media coverage of what APL is doing. Multiple articles were either mentioned, quoted, or highlighted on, and I can't, you can't buy that coverage. It was really fantastic, nice to see. The other portion of my report that I want to go back to, which is a special report on Christmas, being open on Christmas and New Year's Eve. When we first had this discussion, one of the concerns was that the branches aren't used during these holidays. We close at 3 o'clock. And we went through and did a statistical analysis of both door count and circulated items. We are open till 3 o'clock. And in both of those, from a statistical point of view, it was well worth having those locations open. We actually, if you kind of parsed out the hourly usage in terms of circulation, we saw a bump in items circulated per hour. And we only saw a decrease of around 6% when it came to people coming in the door per hour. So this was something, when we had this discussion, I was tasked to report, and I'm very happy to report these positive. Are there any questions on my report?
Could you just go over the after-hours policy of the meetings?
We're kind of basing on the same model that we use at all of our other locations, Washington Avenue specifically.
Let's take that.
So since we did the change in this back stairwell, not
Yeah.
allowing access to the back stairwell, this gives us the ability to close everybody off from the library itself and just make those rooms available after hours. And we're experimenting, we're working with different groups to see what the flow is and how the reaction of the public is. My brothers and sisters keeper of Albany met last week there. It was a pretty positive. I mean, people still want to be able to enter and exit through Washington Avenue, but it was better than not having the space at all, and it was great to kind of, I was at another event, I came back to my office, and it was great that on a Thursday night, I walk into the back auditorium and it's packed full of people. So we're working on that. We're actually going to change those doors so that those doors are lockable after hours, and then one of our maintenance guys is already in the building So he closes up once the event's done. So we treat it the same way we treat it at all of our other locations.
So when they're in the building after hours, is the back door open? So
The back door is open,
people
so
can come in and
people
out,
can come and go.
and then the maintenance people close up when they.
So there's no access to the collection?
There's no access to the collection. If somebody wanted to, they could, for right now, they could go up in the elevator, but we're actually having the elevator people reprogram the elevator so that after hours, we can make it so that you can only use the elevator to go between the Elm Street entrance and exit up to the first floor that allows you to a small and large elevator. So it's providing a service that we've had at all of our other, at 6 of our other locations, at 5 of our other locations, at an additional location.
Regarding circulation numbers, I know that there have been some discussion in past reports that the CERT numbers were a little bit not
Yeah.
really reliable. Are you feeling like those are
We won't,
coming together?
we
and more
won't feel
trustable or no?
comfortable, it's still an apples to orange comparison.
Okay.
I think once we get to the corresponding months where we're using Sierra,
Okay.
those are Horizon numbers, those are Sierra numbers.
Okay.
I think we'll start to really see kind of a little bit more of an equaling out. And we're really tasking the system to help us figure out why there are such large discrepancies. And also, as you know, as an attachment, we are working very hard as one of our goals this year is to raise circulation. This branch is a perfect example. They're doing the Winter Book Club, where it's like summer reading, but in the winter for adults. They do a fantastic job with displays. There are a few other locations that are working on that. And we have met with the people who do, the librarians who do collection development, and we are tasking them to really take it less of a you buy books approach and more of a you are the curator of your collection, and it's about getting books on the shelf that are going to interest and attract people to buy.
Great.
In your report, you mentioned a couple of things that you all have identified that there is a problem overall in circulation. Would you share with us a little bit about that?
Some of it is simply, we did a graph, just because we were spitballing some ideas, we did a graph of circulation compared to jobless rate and library usage compared to jobless rate. As more people become employed, they do use the library less. So that's one descriptor. Some of the other is just collection development. When we did our survey last year, it was to see, we literally went out and asked, why aren't you borrowing books from us? Some of it was we did not, people had the perception we weren't buying new books. Because our books come in the door and they automatically go out to people who request them, not just here, but other locations. So we will be buying more bestsellers. We will be buying more popular books. And also, after the first or second copy, any copy after that is only requestable by APL patrons, which I love sharing with other libraries. I love being a part of the system. However, most smaller libraries don't even allow their new books to be requested. So we're shouldering a tremendous amount of the carry the load. So we're still pumping as many books into the system as everyone else. However, the extra books we're treating like a special collection and only allowing them to go among our patrons.
Are you surveying patrons to identify particular interests? I know you had a conversation with the trustee.
Yes, we're going to definitely do some outreach, and that's definitely part of that memo that went out to the staff of, we're going to get back to reader services, which is something that APL was fantastic at, to the point where librarians from APL would go to statewide and region-wide conferences and present on it. I think that's something that we lost. I can give you a few reasons why we lost that. We had to open brand new beautiful buildings. We did a fantastic job of building opening day collections, but we've lost a little bit of that philosophy. So now we're kind of going back to that and looking at, it's not about buying as many books as possible. It's about identifying what the public's asking for and then turning around and providing not just the books they're asking for, but figuring out, okay, if they're into these books, well, let's find some other titles they don't know about and put them in our hands. And I have to say, I met with the a significant amount of the staff that does collection development, and they were very excited about this idea. So I think and a little more marketing, a little more getting out there marketing the library, but also marketing the collection in the building, which again, walk around this branch particularly, I can't leave this branch without a book in my hand. And we just need to do that at our other locations.
So do you think that various locations would have an emphasis on certain
Of course.
parts of the collection?
Of course.
Yeah, so that's a shift.
That is a shift, but it's something that we did many years ago.
That's right.
And it's getting back to that, here's a part of your budget that's about reflecting the character of your neighborhood. In other words, here, science fiction. At Washington Avenue, it's mystery. At Howe, it's urban fiction, and it's also, there are some other genres that do really well. And it's going out to the public, identifying those genres, and kind of building your collection around that. Still buying all the mysteries, buying all the bestsellers, but really making each branch kind of have its own character. And I think that'll carry. I think that's evident in programming, so I think the staff here are talented enough that they'll be able to do it.
That's great.
Thank you.
I have one comment. We ended up in the children's section at Washington Avenue on a Sunday. Lynn was going on a road trip and needed some Harry Potter DVD, CDs. And so downstairs was a little quiet, and we didn't find them downstairs, so we went upstairs, and that room was packed with families, like all these little gatherings of, really interesting looking families with all ages, and then, parents and kids sort of huddled over stuff and reading, and it was exploding. I mean, Lynn and I actually stood there like, I can't believe this is so awesome.
The room
It
looks
was
so
a
good
huge
too, right?
transformation of that.
And, come here on a Sunday, you'll see Allison and I almost every Sunday. But, the same thing, I think we're gonna see that Sundays are a key component to service, because that's when people have time to bring their kids. And again, more people are employed than ever, they're looking for something to do that Saturday or Sunday. And, so, and also I have to give my staff credit, they've changed the nature of those rooms, so there's more activity. In other words, there's Duclos here, which are very popular. There are games to play here and puzzles to play here. The staff there have done an incredible job of kind of cultivating a collection of activity. And, they've done a good job of identifying what the public wants, and it definitely attracts people to it.
So how is that event, the day where you go make stuff? Did you do that yet? Like a craft day for adults?
There's almost a craft, there are multiple craft programs going on attached to Albany Made. So I don't know if that's.
I reposted it and said, who wants to go? And all my friends were like, yeah.
We have a ton of craft programs.
All right, thanks, Scott. I guess we'll move on to the Finance Committee report, even though we were a short one. Want to take it, Mike?
Absolutely, I'll jump right in. So the Finance Committee met on January 28th. There were a few agenda items up for discussion, as I'm sure you'll see in the packets, one of which was the final budget modification for 2015, which we passed and present to the board. Also, we began discussions on the 2017 APL budget. We looked at a couple different versions that Mary and Scott and I'm sure some of the other staff worked up. And I believe, if memory serves, The two versions essentially were a 2017 budget with a 1% increase and a 2017 budget with no increase. Had a very informative discussion. We moved to recommend for the board's consideration the budget with the 1% increase.
Okay, so those should be some action items later for us on that.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
One thing to mention is that the organization did a great job, came in under budget in 2019.
Yeah, I think when you look at the treasurer's report, it wound up that in terms of income, we wound up making 67,000. In our prior forecast, we had thought that we would use over 200,000. And really, the majority of the reason for cost control. So everybody.
Which areas do you?
Yeah, we'll get to it. We have a whole sheet on it.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, it's in your packet. The majority of them, the source of funds are the top part of, it's a sheet in the packet. So the sources are either if the revenue came in higher or if the cost came in lower, and they used to be obviously if a revenue came in lower or if a cost came in higher. So the majority of them were sources, which were excellent. And when we do the forecast, that's one of the things that we're doing this year. We're implementing a purchase order system. So some of it is timing, and some of it is just that we didn't spend as much as we had forecast. The last time we forecasted was in September this year. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
So we shouldn't ask questions about the budget yet.
That'll
We're gonna
come
go
up,
through-
on the new business.
Okay.
Anything else from the finance committee? All right, thank you. Review of the policies and procedures grid, that's usually Melanie's. Scott, do you have anything on that?
No, I know that they did not meet, but they will be meeting soon. Melanie apologizes that she's not here, she had to go home sick. So, there's anything new until the finance committee.
May I ask a question?
I'm sorry?
Do you know if we had any response from the letters that went out regarding the service to children?
Not yet, no
Nothing.
responses yet.
Okay.
Okay, on to new business, the nomination to fill, the vacant trustee seat.
As I mentioned earlier, we interviewed 3 very talented candidates. What we screened for were 4 goals: knowledge of libraries in general and the Albany Public Library system specifically, their passion for libraries, and our perception of compatibility with our current team. The candidates, we looked at the candidates' perception of their personal professional style, and we tried to consider the projected learning curve. You know, could this person come on board and hit the ground, because there's going to be a very short, time that they will be called to serve and realize what they need. So, as I said, we had 3 very capable candidates, where we are very honored to recommend John Davis, who served with us before. He has affirmed that he is available, he has time to commit to us, not only attending the full board meeting, but also participating in our meetings. So that's cool.
Is there anything else that you were marrying? Asking you something we have to do?
No, as long as the committee sent their notice out 10 days before, in accordance with the bylaws, it's good.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion?
Motion that we accept John Davis as our new trustee.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Donna. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? It carries.
Yay!
Welcome back.
You get to go
And I mentioned to some people here earlier that the conditions My concerns have changed, and I'm gonna run for full term.
I
I realized how much
Arlene,
my
you
kids
too.
like that I'm on the board, and
That's great.
that it's modeling, giving back to the community. Now they're old enough to really get that, so,
Good.
okay.
Great.
And I'll get back to paperweight until the next time.
Funny.
Never give back.
Sure, you just wanted another paperweight.
Just don't get that many paperwork.
No, that's right. Where is it? It's on top.
Thank you again, Dr.
Sculpture.
Do I have to actually?
Thank you.
If people want to see it happen, we can make it happen. John has just signed his oath of office, so
Yay, James.
officially a trustee.
Okay.
Just in time for budget discussion now, John.
Always fun.
I guess we'll move on to the proposed 2017 budget.
Do you want to do it? Do you want me to do it? Okay. On your packet, on the desk, you have the 0% increase in the budget. And then in the packet, we have the 1% increase. And so the committee has decided to put forward the 1%. But in the 2017 column, which is in your packet, the 1%, right now, the tax levy in 2016 will be $8,420,686, and this would bring in $8,504,893. We went through, basically, Scott and I do the budget, we review it with Chuck, and so we look forward to what we think is going to happen in the other revenue categories, and most of them we think are going to stay flat. So I don't need to go through all of them with you, but anything we know about, we put in there, and it winds up that, so we think the other revenue will come in around $426,000. We had a bigger year this year because we had a big, we had bigger, excuse me, in 2015, I'm comparing it to, we had that change, the future operations income. But at any rate, what you really want to know about in this budget is that if we do the 1%, we are going to take out $382,849 from the fund balance to balance the budget. And the assumptions we have for 2015 in terms of the expenses are that we assume that we would give, it's going to be a year where we go for a new contract with the employees. We used an assumption of a 1% raise with a 0.75 step, so we put that into the budget. We also put in a 10% increase in the healthcare, just because that has been normally the experience, but that might be someplace we might have some play. And the majority of other costs are in line with either 2015 or 2016 budget. So for the most part, they're the same. I think we held tight on the materials budget, and we are trying to use the cost control. We were very successful this year in having cost control in terms of the administrative and miscellaneous. We also had a lot of success this year in terms of the utilities cost, but we're thinking that was more weather-driven. So all in all, this has a tight cost control. We did the iterations, Scott and I, in his office probably 3 or 4 times that he had me take out more, hold tighter on expenses. So we feel good about this budget.
When Mary, and this is where the 5-year plan works really well for us. Mary does a fantastic job of creating a tool that's a 5-year plan, kind of projects this out. Continue to spend the same way, when do we run out of money? And it was a great exercise for me because I understood how much we relied on our fund balance going into 2019, and now it becomes how do we build a budget so that we don't ever run out of money. So Mary took on the really difficult task of please build a budget for me that takes as little out of the fund balance as possible. And, you know, we came together, and I think this is a very conservative budget. And, you know, we run a very lean organization. If we get any leaner, I think then we start to cut into all the things that we do really well. So that's always a concern for me. And as you can see, the things that are growing in terms of the services that the public are looking for create an added strain on the building. After hours meetings, community room use, facilitating those community room usage, cleaning up after that usage. So we built a very, very lean budget that we think still responds to the public, but, you know, is realistic.
Could you tell me what's the largest percentage that we can increase the tax levy? I know it's not 2%, but it's.
0.12 is the estimate right now. It's going to change a little bit, 0.12. So this would require an override. You'd be in excess of the tax cap.
0.12.
That's less than 1%. I mean, the thing that, I think that, well, that's,
So
yeah.
the
But the
override
thing
is
is, they
10%?
still, just so Bob, we're clear about the tax cap, when they give us that percentage, it's still early, and then they
Yeah,
give us, because we're going for
we're
2017 now. And that, the actual for 2017 hasn't been published yet, and that's a quandary we go into every year. That I can't really do that tax cap calculation in full until probably the summertime, because it's not published. So we usually, every year, Bob can explain to, we pass an override, and like last year, we could reverse the override because we came in under the cap. But we will, by presenting this, we would pass the override with it.
Yeah, and I mean, so I agree with everything Mary just said, and the problem is you're going to be going out in May with the school district, who is going to be putting forth a budget based on 0.12 tax cap. There's no way you're going to be able to explain to the average voter why your tax cap isn't really 0.12, and you don't know what it is yet. I mean, so I think
Yeah.
you just got to understand that you have to go out with the optic of the tax cap this year in May is going to be 0.12 for school districts. You're going to be asking for in excess of that. So,
And that's why we provided the 0% increases that is.
And in order for that to get passed, what's the percentage of voters who have to approve it? Was it 70%?
you're a local government under Part A. So as long as this board, when it approves the tax cap overrides the budget overrides the tax cap by 60% of the voting strength of the board, then it's just a majority of the voters. The school district, if they were to choose to go over the tax cap, they have to have it passed by a supermajority of the voters who vote. So you're a Part A local government versus a Part B school district. So,
Well, I think that probably when we look at our organization, it would be fair to say, given that the majority of the librarians and all the people who work at the library are probably, compared to other libraries within the area, at a lower salary, and that we're going for our new contract, that would be a big part of our explanation as to why we're asking for it, and that we also have added hours. I mean, I think that's the other thing that we're trying to support in this budget.
And Mary has done an excellent job of creating a reference sheet. One thing that we heard from the taxpayers when we went out to neighborhood associations was, how much is this really going to cost us? We actually want an answer. How much extra money is this on my bill? And, you know, so we would go out with the sheet saying, this would increase, increase my taxes by like.
We would say, we could say that that's a thing that I think that we stress, let's say if we even did another chart of saying, we could take an average home in Albany and take their school tax, an average home and take their library tax. So we tried to give the majority of home values, but really, I mean, even if you went for a $250,000 house, it would go up $3.83 in your tax. You have to also remember that when you look at the taxes, every year when I do this, every year I have to call down to the tax office because they always change the mix, if you will, a little bit between the homestead, which is your home tax, and the non-homestead, which is the business tax, but it's very close. So this is very, very, very close to what it will be for them in 2017. But the part about when they change the mix, none of us know.
And typically a board doesn't vote on the first presentation. So
We vote in March.
yeah, typically the library votes in March, so this would be new business, so not something, that I think the finance committee will be meeting again. We get some feedback, and then we can go back.
Yeah. The one thing about the 0% vote would be that if we went for not to increase vote, then we would be taking $467,000 out of the fund balance.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify one thing, though. I think I know the answer, but I think it'd be helpful. And this question is directed at Bob. The tax freeze law that has been in effect for the last 3 years, which essentially says under certain conditions, in a consolidation plan, if a local government or a school district stays within the tax cap, if it exceeds the tax cap, the taxpayers of that unit would forfeit this tax rebate check that they would otherwise be given. However, for us in our circumstances as it relates to the 2017 budget, when we go out for the tax levy, as of now, that is set to expire, so that wouldn't be.
Right, the freeze is expired, so the schools have gotten their benefit at this point. Everybody is getting or about to get your check. So that freeze is over with. So you don't have that situation to deal with. You just are getting hit with the whammy of the 10% tax cap this year. And the reason that is so low is because inflation was so low. And frankly, nobody can really look at this, but if gas prices stay down what they are, by the time you do your calculation, that number's not going to be up anymore. Because that's one of the biggest drivers of what that number is. Gas and non-durable goods.
Any more discussion on the proposed 2017 budget?
I have a question,
Sure.
or just an issue. Great job, whole library, basically spending, what, $300,000 less last year than you thought, right? You didn't have to take
Right.
a little over 300,000 out.
Yep.
Is there any chance something like that will happen here? And by,
In 2017?
yeah,
Um,
I know you can't count on it. And I guess I'm just talking out loud with people who have sat with me before. That's how I work things out.
I think this year was a significant amount of savings because this is the hardest the staff have worked in a long time to find savings. So it's kind of like, I think we could find additional savings, but I don't think anything near what we did this year. I mean, this year, this was a concerted effort by the entire leadership of the library, from the business office down to the L3s who run the service areas, of how do we save money? And my concern is if we try to do any more, it's going to dip into the services that we
The
provide.
only, we have something to answer that way for 2016. For 2016, because we have had a meeting of the minds with DASME, we have 162,000 that we're, and I started to build them back now. So like when we took down the building next to the Howe Branch and anything major projects that we have, we can draw down that 162. We don't know of anything that we have similar to that for 2017.
What I'm getting at is looking at this sheet,
Yeah.
and I haven't looked at one in
Yeah.
a while,
Yep,
that if we do the tax cap override,
yep,
and we pass a budget and it's approved
yep.
by the voters, and we have another great year like this, then it basically looks like we're raising the taxes to put back into fund balance. So if we anticipated that, we need to think about it, but if you don't anticipate it, that's good enough.
We don't.
I mean, we always will struggle. I mean, Mary and I are definitely on the same page in this regard. We try really hard to find efficiencies wherever we can. And we do it. However, again, this was a few years of the organization not taking on that role. And I have to say, this is a pretty good board when it comes to making sure we keep on task when it comes to
And I think it reflects a change in leadership at the library itself.
So, well, thank you. But again, I have a real concern if we cut any more, then
And
we
the
won't see Sundays happen.
The only other thing that we have struggled, the one line that we struggle with is furniture and building improvements line for the forecast, because obviously if we keep on doing projects ourselves, we're fine with that, but if something really major were to happen, then we would need more money in that line. Or if we had a terrible, the NF's done a great job in terms of the utility, so that's been awesome. But we worry about the buildings, because we have so many.
And there are, there's case study after case study, and I think that's why NYLA had its March 2nd, which is, you guys are free, please come to Advocacy Day, instead of just calling it Advocacy Day. I get to, I see what they put out, I see the nightmares that other libraries have financially, because something happens with the building that you just don't expect. And there's always that worry of, you never know. Just like your house, you never know when there's a leaking pipe that you didn't see, and that causes damage.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the 2016 budget modifications. Members of the Finance Committee want to comment on this, and we'll get action to take.
Okay.
Sure.
I mean, what, from Scott's experience, we tried to institute, obviously, budget mods in the third quarter, and then budget mods at the year end, so that we can reflect that the budget at year end will be a zero, will be with the actuals. So we go through the forecast like we told you, and we did that in September, and now we are back here, and these are the actuals. So again, if a revenue is higher than the forecast, that was a source, and if a cost was lower than the forecast, that's a source, and if the opposite, they're uses. So you can see there were several really great sources, and the majority of them were like a wonderful job by Dan and his team in terms of using less in maintenance, repairs, and supplies. Furniture building improvements came in 100 less than the forecast. Professional services 40 less. And automation services and automation hardware, I honestly think that had to do with Marcia, had personal things that happened, so, or normally she would have spent that money. And then when you come down to the usage, the salaries being over, that's my error, because there was an extra payroll in December that I missed in my forecast. Aside from that, they were all pretty close. So we do go through line by
The
line.
purpose of the last budget mod is to help kind of balance your books so that you can make better prediction for future budgets. And also, this is a great exercise because it gives us an idea of, like Alyssa's question earlier, where was the savings, and are those savings that are something that we're going to see repeat? So it's always well worth doing.
Okay, we got some action to take on modifications. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Mike, thank you. All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Discussion? Thank you. Board retreat planning. This was brought up a little bit at the last executive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, we didn't have any vexing questions. We'll try to think
We'll gather
of
something.
That's good. Really good.
Oh, okay.
We have time.
We're 6 months together. Questions.
make it to my other meeting. Okay, right.
Good night.
Good night.
Is that your pencil there,
At the last executive committee meeting, we discussed ever so briefly the board retreat. One thing we did discuss about it was, well, we haven't really discussed when or where, but we did discuss what we wanted to talk about a little bit, and that was budget processes. And we did discuss a little bit about bringing in some past board members who went through the 2008, no, 11, thank you, budget process, when we asked for a lot of money and it failed, and had to go back and ask again for a lot of money, but not quite as much. Maybe get Dennis Gaffney and Holly McKenna and anyone else who was around for that. Other than that, there was very little. We haven't, and I think we'll probably discuss that at the next executive committee meeting, which will be in March, about a board retreat, hopefully for late April, early May.
Was the idea that we would sort of dissect that experience so that we could take away some?
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking for
It's a lot.
lessons.
It's a lot.
A little bit of lessons learned, a little bit of closure, a little bit of better understanding. I think that's what.
I think that's what come out, yeah.
And I know we did
Do we
talk.
have really good?
Was anybody at the board?
Well, we
You were on
also,
the board?
Don and I were just elected when the budget failed.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so there's, and I don't think in the pre-Mary Ellen Pichet era of presidency, I don't think we kept as great of a history of what was going on. I think we're much more thorough now than we were then. And I think learning a little bit from what the people who passed that budget and what their thought processes were would serve to benefit us. And there's, like Donna said, there's nobody here now who was on that board then. We didn't come up with that budget. We were just there for the vote.
You were actually elected on the
At
second
that-
ballot.
Yes.
As the
Yeah.
vote down.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think some insight would be beneficial.
And we were also trying to be strategic, also looking at what happened with this last school, in terms of the high school.
Yeah.
Because we didn't understand why a situation that we didn't have, they got a position out there, why it failed. So, we thought it would be helpful for us moving forward to get a good handle on this process. And so we could be strategic, and I think we're fairly moving forward.
I think the thought was also to time it so that incoming board members and outgoing board members, which I think is only, it's
There's
only
two.
Three.
Three.
three. So three seats, since there's a changeover, it would be great to kind of have an involvement of longstanding board members who are leaving, and also interface with new board members so we can kind of get everybody on the same page earlier.
Well, that's an interesting proposition because, the libraries are used as this example of, the building, progressive, democratic, sort of support your neighborhood. And they're being pulled out in support of the school vote, like, hey, look what happens when you build gorgeous libraries, people use them, and they increase usage, and it's more successful. So I think it's an interesting, being reflective in that way. What is there to be learned about this process? And it was a pretty remarkable thing, and you can see how a misstep, damages that.
We'll see what happens tonight too. The lesson might be, stay away from election day and go for special elections when your supporters come out.
I'll just throw this thought out there because you're on this topic, but going a little further back and inviting some of the trustees who were blamed for that might be useful too, because they were very, very bothered by how the library marketed that. You know, they essentially thought that at the time that the second vote was done, the then board threw it all on their laps, and some of them are still upset about it. And these are all people that were there when you rechartered, were there when the budget, when the buildings were done, and then, there was a real negative taste by a bunch of them after that vote. So it might be interesting to hear that perspective if you're really interested in pulling off the scab. I don't know if you are or not, but,
This is a
yeah.
learning and growing process for us, so that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I like the idea of this quite a bit. Obviously, the 2011 vote occurred before my tenure began, but I think it's a helpful exercise, also because we saw even in this year with the consistent and extreme diligence towards cost-cutting measures, we're still, unfortunately, drawing down the fund balance. And I'm sure that the 2011 proposal to go out to the voters took that into consideration, the long-term financial health of the library and the fund balance. So I think in the future, when we do that, when we go out, I think considering posing a budget that ensures that we're not drawing down the fund balance year to year is important, and that obviously will require some planning and explaining purposely and effectively rather than something.
Right now we have the finance committee report.
It's all been black and white. Boy.
Let me just say though, I think in terms of a planning session, in terms of a strategic planning session, that sounds like great fodder for a report on, but I would want to make sure that we involve some kind of forward-looking, strategy steps as part of that, not just, so it's almost like twofold, frankly. It's almost like a generation, generate the thinking of all, you're talking about past members, you're talking about the people who are involved. So you have to cultivate all of that, and then at some point, we take that and do our strategic plan.
Well,
It's
that's-
almost like a two-step process,
Yeah.
and that might not be in the same day.
Well, and that was actually, that's the thing, because we will be launching, we need to start the process of our next strategic plan. We're at the end, the last one, so this would kind of be, this is kind of where the conversation came out of, which is the idea of, let's put some closure to some past issues that I think some of us feel there needs to be closure. I mean, Mary and I hear it a lot, and Stephanie hears it a lot. I mean, that vote still is brought up to us all the time. So we'd like to kind of get some closure as an organization so we can help the community move forward.
Any other discussion on the board retreat and its stages?
So what are our next, that's
The
just a
executive
report
committee's
out?
gonna meet, and we're gonna
Oh, I see.
working on an agenda and picking a date and place. Go from there.
An easier place to get to, not as pretty.
Oh, now I know who it is.
And I think last on our old business here, one thing on our old business is the quarterly board meeting evaluation, which is on the back of your packet. You take a few minutes to fill that out. I will collect them and give them to our president, who will collate and come up with some numbers for us for the next meeting, I'm sure.
Make sure they say how far Tim did turn the meeting.
Almost on time. Started late.
We have an extra one on John.
from the printer, it wasn't, I don't think. it
Well,
was.
one thing that we did do is, John, we're buying paper in bulk. And if you look at our budget line for, where we put a lot of effort into, we saved about $10,000 in office
Like
supplies,
stuff, that's something.
which is always kind of like a bugaboo of mine, pet project, saving office supplies. So we now they do a drop shipment of paper, and then we distribute it out as needed. It's nice paper, but
That'd be
Paper.
amazing.
We don't
Yeah, I have
use
to
this,
check it.
we don't use this quality paper unless we're actually submitting the paper to court.
Say that again?
We don't use this quality paper at the Attorney General's office unless we're actually submitting papers to
Okay.
court.
We'll check it out.
One of my criticisms, just an observation.
Just pop them in the folder as you go around.
Doing away with dinner is a good idea too. When I started on the board, and my dinner was somewhat mean.
we might start breaking off.
Scott, let us know how the audio came out for.
Yeah, hopefully this one comes out. The picture in the last one was fantastic, the audio is not. So, got some great stills for the annual report.
Gotta get us out.
That's John.
Sorry.
We're gonna play us out.
Oh, yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion?
No public comments, so. Do I have a second? Thanks, Andy. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.